With me in the studio, as I announced previously, I have Professor Anthony Kila, who is a professor of strategy and development and also Institute Director at the Commonwealth Institute of Advanced and Professional Studies, CIAPS. I also have with me today Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Gentlemen, thank you for showing up. Because sometimes you just disappear and I'm looking for you all over the place. But it's good to have you. But today, basically, we've been looking at the situation in Rivers State, talking to the House of Rest member, Abiante, who is representing Andoni Okpobo Anchor Federal Constituency, who organized a protest on Friday to support the sitting governor of Fubara and to say that Governor Wike should be called to order, or now, as he is, Minister Wike. And then we went straight to Ondo State, where we spoke to the legal advisor to the Ondo Redemption Front, Dr. Ajulo, who was also saying that, look, due process must be followed. Ayedatiwa has every right under the Constitution and all of that. She will be faced with this kind of situation. What are the implications for the democratic process in Nigeria? What lessons can we learn? What next? Because it looks like the saga is not over, either in Rivers State or Ondo State. Let me go to Professor Aworawo first, before I come to a chief whose constituency is very close to one of the theaters of war. Professor Aworawo.
Well, the events that are unfolding are revealing the worst in our political system and the worst in our approach to politics and public life. Unfortunately, we have had this pattern since independence, where we have winner takes all. We have individuals who try to present themselves as godfathers. We have politics of bitterness playing out. But fortunately, the rule of law helps to mitigate the negative sides of all of this. If and when the rule of law is followed, it reduces the capacity of people to be rascally and try to, pull down the roof, so to speak. As far as Rivers is concerned, the issues are clear. The governor is there. Individuals who are loyal to the Minister for Federal Capital Territory are expressing their loyalty by either resigning or crossing over to APC from PDP. These issues are clear. They will unfold, and hopefully stability will be restored in Rivers moving forward. But it's a zero-sum game. If Fubara succeeds, it becomes, he will establish his own base in Rivers. Wike will lose out, and if he loses out, he may also lose out even as minister, because the reason he's being kept is because of his perceived political relevance. But if Wike wins, he becomes a firmly established godfather. But the odds are in favor of Fubara, because there is this very strong anti-godfatherism sentiment across the country. We see it play out in Edo. We've seen it play out all over the place. And the solidarity that has been demonstrated in support of Fubara, establishes that there is this strong anti-godfatherism sentiment across the country. It will make it difficult for Wike. The second thing is that people perceive Wike as extreme in his trying to gather things for himself. He's a minister in APC, trying to be godfather in PDP, trying to control, Rivers and all of that. And the fact that Fubara is Ijo, I understand Ijo sociology very well. It will be very difficult to remove Fubara. Ijo, it will be difficult for Wike rather. So the odds are in favor of Fubara. It should just keep calm, govern well, because at the end of the day, is how the governance impacts on the people positively that is important. All of these fight, struggle, and all that, strife, personal interest, and all that, they are not so important as much as good governance, the one that will impact positively on the people. So let's see how things unfold. One last thing I want to say about this is that people have been talking about the president intervening. I don't think the president has business to intervene. We're in a federal system. The state should work itself out. The only aspect of it is that Wike is a minister in Tinubu's government. And so to that extent, Tinubu he has this leverage to say, don't go that direction, don't bring our government into disrepute. That is the only thing he can do. But to say go and intervene and all that. And that also brings us to Ondo. The intervention that the president tried to undertake, before now, I don't think that was right. The deputy governor should write a letter of resignation undated, so anytime they can just write a date and say he has resigned. That is not along the line of rule of law, which is why I talked about rule of law from the beginning. As long as rule of law is followed, as you can see now, the governor, unfortunately, his health deteriorated. He has gone back to Germany. Like the Ajulo said, we don't have any other option. The only option is for the deputy governor to become acting governor, which is what has happened. Any other alternative will have plunged the place into chaos. So rule of law, that is what is important. As long as rule of law is followed, is obeyed, is talked to, all of these personal interests, this tension here and there will be mitigated because this is what the law says and we have to follow, the provisions of the law. These are the things we encourage, to continue to play out so that we can have stability in the system.
Very good. I get your point. Professor Kila.
Well, I think, Professor Aworawo has put the thing on the right track. I want citizens to look at the situation and you say, what can we learn from it? What happens next and what is the way forward? I think three things need to be said. The number one thing is that the citizens, people generally need to realize that politicians have been rascals in the way they're behaving. This is what you call bad table manners. Some people are trying to eat too much. Some people are eating are speaking while eating. Some people are throwing food. You call it kindergarten politics, and I see why, but people might think that is rude. It's actually very indulgent. This is plural, not kindergarten.
Some of these people.
Yes, so it's actually a very plural way they're doing this. But I want citizens to realize something, that once it tells you how partisan politics can lower people's reputation and standard, because if you start from Ondo State, the kind of thing that Rotimi Akeredolu is being linked to, sit down, grabbing the seat syndrome, not being clear how healthy or unhealtly he is, a state that seems headless. These are things you would not expect from that Akeredolu you knew 20 years ago. As a matter of fact, up to 3 years ago, this it's very strange, but it is happening. The question citizens need to be asking, and this is lessons to be learned, is how do we prevent this from happening in the future? The way to present it is not to let personal issues trump institutional issues. And I call people to River State from this one, that it is interesting to know that the disagreement they're having, the separation they're having, the defection they're having, it is not on program, it is not on policies, it is not on something to say, I'll rather solar energy or electric energy. Nothing of such, nothing about governance. It is about loyalty to individuals. And I dare say the essence of a democratic system is that we devoid personality and talk about the institution, positions, and the rule of law. And we're not doing it. And if we want to learn anything, we need to look at that very quickly. We are a country that went through the Yaradua saga. We shouldn't have any problem at all in knowing what succession should look like. We shouldn't have a problem at all in knowing that if someone is in government, they're sick, the person after them takes over. It's not, we're talking about the rule of law. I call it common sense. The reason why people have deputies, we have them in our clubs, we have them in our association, we have them in our offices. The reason why you have deputies that if number one is not around, number two steps in automatically. And those who pretend as if that is a matter to discuss, either being totally folly or vexatiously malicious. So we need to start looking at these things very clearly. The role of the President of the Republic, of the Federal Republic, in this situation is worrisome. It is worrisome from two reasons. Number one, those calling him, pulling him, they're very wrong. They are creating a situation where the president, even if it's a saint today, they're creating the president for tomorrow where somebody who is not a saint will arrogate power that they shouldn't arrogate. They're killing federalism. But then we have a problem, and here we have to be objective. While this president is not sitting aloof, and we're saying we should respect federalism, don't forget that we had one before, that even if the whole house was burning, he sat there not doing anything. So we have to sort of balance it. And if this one is trying to say, let's see what we can do about it, the one there before did nothing. I think of the two, I'd rather this one, at this case.
Well, the one that was there before, incidentally, is celebrating his 81st birthday.
They wasted so many words on him. Let me be on the record for that.
And there isn't a shortage of psychopaths.
Yes.
Who are saying that President Buhari is the best thing that ever showed up in this environment
sliced bread.
since the invention of sliced bread and toothpaste. But there are many Nigerians who don't think so.
I am one of those who do not think so.
In any case, it was an APC to APC transition. Will anybody ask the right questions? Maybe not. Too many people who are absent-minded running Nigeria at one point or the other. Let's look at another program. I have the privilege of having two professors of international relations. Leaders from ECOWAS have maintained sanctions on the Niger Republic, which were imposed after a military coup last July, and also saw progress towards a swift shift to a civilian rule before lifting restrictions. Last Sunday's head of state and government summit in Abuja, Nigeria, deliberated on coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, Guinea, and Niger, focusing on the need for swift transitions. The heads of state committee aims to engage with Niger Republic's regime to assess transition progress, promising to ease sanctions upon compliance, amid calls for President Mohamed Bazoum's return. The country's military rulers have decided on a 3-year transition, which has stalled talks. ECOWAS, acknowledging Niger's humanitarian crisis, accused the regime of impending aid flow. The meeting also addressed delayed transitions in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Guinea, proposing travel restriction should be lifted for officials in transition.
Decides to set up a committee of heads of state made up of the president and head of state of the Republic of Togo, the president and the head of state of the Republic of Sierra Leone, the president and head of state of the Republic of Benin, to engage with CNSP and other stakeholders with a view to agreeing on a short transition roadmap, establishing transition organs, as well as facilitating the setting up of a transition monitoring and evaluation mechanism towards the speedy restoration of constitutional order. The authority will progressively ease the sanctions imposed on Niger. Failure by the CNSP to comply with the outcomes of the engagement with the committee, ECOWAS shall maintain all sanctions, including the use of force, and will request African Union and all other partners to enforce the targeted sanctions on members of the CNSP and their associates. Consequently, the authority calls on the CNSP to release President Mohamed Bazoum, his family and associates immediately and without condition. The authority requests the Troika, under the leadership of His Excellency President Talon of the Republic of Benin, to urgently undertake visits to Burkina Faso, Republic of Guinea and Mali, with a view to re-engaging the three countries in inclusive implementation of the transition program.
At the same time, leaders of the Leaders Summit in Abuja, ECOWAS decided to deploy a regional security mission to Sierra Leone to stabilize tensions that arose in the wake of the failed coup of November 26. The heads of state condemned the coup attempt, urging President Julius Maada Bio's administration to pursue justice through legal means. The summit addressed the situations also in Niger, Senegal, and Gambia, emphasizing the fight against terrorism. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu spoke on the commitment to engage with countries under military rule, advocating for realistic transition plans toward democracy and good governance. He underscored ECOWAS's firm stance against unconstitutional government changes urging support for democratically elected administrations in Sierra Leone and Guinea-Bissau. Across the borders in Central Africa, the Economic Community of Central African States, ECOWAS, has confirmed its decision to uphold the suspension of Gabon, which was initially imposed in the aftermath of the military overthrow of President Ali Bongo Ondimba in August of last year. ECOWAS, comprising member states from the Central African region, has maintained a firm stance against Gabon's political turmoil. The suspension serves as a punitive measure in response to the unconstitutional change in leadership that unfolded in the nation. The military intervention in August prompted widespread concern and condemnation from the international community. In the light of these events, ECOWAS swiftly imposed sanctions on Gabon, emphasizing the importance of upholding democratic principles and the rule of law in the region.
While taking into account the peaceful and inclusive nature of the political transition underway in the Gabonese Republic and the need to accompany this member state towards a return to constitutional order, the conference decided to maintain the decision to suspend Gabon's participation in community activities until a return to constitutional order, in accordance with the text of the Community and African Union. The conference followed the presentation of the transition chronogram in the Gabonese Republic by General Brice Clotaire Oligui Nguema, President of the Transition in the Gabonese Republic. The conference took note of the commitment of the President of the Transition in the Gabonese Republic to work to maintain the duration of the transition at a firm 24 months. With regard to the decision on the provisional relocation of the community's headquarters to Malabo, Equatorial Guinea, the conference took into account the positive and encouraging developments in the current political and security situation in the Gabonese Republic and decided to defer its implementation until further notice.
Well, very good optics. ECOWAS is raging against military interventions across the states. ECOWAS in Central Africa is saying more or less the same thing. Good optics. But will anything change? Will it make any difference? Will the coup plotters listen? Does either ECOWAS or ECOWAS have the capacity to make any difference? Let me start with you, Professor Kila.
Yes, thank you. I think so. We say ECOWAS is making the right noises, but if you look at it, the noise they were making before is slightly different from what they're saying now. Right now, they're talking about realistic transition. And, you know, in diplomacy, the term realistic and transition, especially the realistic one, it cuts two ways. You know, one side, for those demanding it, it means that you have to be quick and don't ask for something terrible or something that we cannot show to our own constituents. But for those from whom we're asking it, it also tells them that we understand you cannot go overnight. So we're going to give you time to walk through it. It's a subtle message there, you know, which students of international relations will really enjoy to delve into. But it's a coded message to say that we know you have to go, we know you cannot rush out, so we're going to walk with you to go, and this is what we want. So it's a very pragmatic approach. The other thing is, and this is true, the unison voice from both ECOWAS and ECOWAS. So all of a sudden, the whole of Africa is recognizing that democratic change is the only change acceptable, and that there must be good governance, and leaders must be democratic leaders. The problem they have is a moral question that has a political consequence, is that some of the people sitting together to mouth democracy are not actually very democratic people, because one of the key points of democracy is limited time in government, is free and fair election. So when some of those people who are so-called democratic leaders themselves have some kind of democratic deficiency, like vitamins in their body, or they lack some of these things, or they're democratically challenged, that means Africa as a continent, people and scholars need to look at how to avoid things that lead to democratic change. And the three major things of the many things that lead to democratic change is, number one, democratic process itself. So when you're elected, you have to be elected democratically. You have to be seen to be legitimate. When you're in power, you have to have good government and good governance. Good governance is the process that you adopt whilst in power, so that everything you do will follow the rule of law. You will not turn the state to a personal fiefdom where you do whatever you like. Then it is not enough to save money, to respect the law. You also have to give good government to the people. People have to see the progress, because if you're a good man, that you're as good as toothpaste or bread, but the economy falls under you, that is not good enough to keep you in power. It's not good for your legacy. If you are good and you invent many things in the state, but you keep killing people, or there's no freedom of expression and the process is not good, that will still lead to undemocratic change. And if you get into power in the wrong way, that might lead to undemocratic change. So African leaders, scholars, and people need to really look at the causes of undemocratic change, not just to stop it when it's happening, but to avoid it from happening at all.
Okay. Professor Aworawo, any basis for optimism about the democratic project in Africa in the face of this recurrent coup attempts, successful coup attempts in both West and Central Africa? The contagion, the emerging contagion of coups.
Well, there is always a basis for hope that things would turn out positive. But hope that is not based on anything concrete is also doesn't make sense. There are two key issues in all of this. The first is the process of emergence of leaders across Africa. Many elections are not free, fair, and credible. And when that happens, it provides a good basis for, first, people become disenchanted about the democratic process, democracy itself, when they know that the person who is now pretending to be the leader did not win election. I mean, it does not have popular mandate of the people. The other is, tenure. I mean, the term that an individual should stay in office. The Nguema Basogo, Equatorial Guinea leader I saw there, he has been there for 44 years. He too was a coup plotter. He overthrew his uncle, Francisco Macias Nguema. He has been there for 44 years. So what legitimacy does he have to say, oh, the two of us are plotting coup?
His son is waiting to take over.
Exactly. So you can see him. Those are the issues. If the leaders of Africa are honest with themselves, they are transparent, they need to address these issues. The issue of tenure elongation is the major issue in these coups that took place. Yeah. Many of the places where coups took place, there was already social ferment. People were protesting. And the military leaders, took advantage of that to take over. So that has to be addressed. People spoke of, or now speak of, a civilian coup before the military coup. That has to be addressed honestly across Africa. And of course, the electoral process across Africa needs to be more transparent. If all of those ones are addressed, there will now be legitimacy to be able to address leaders who may now be, military leaders who become adventurous, who want to take over power. They will be so exposed that it will be difficult for them to govern. If all of these things are addressed, of course, there will be a basis for hope. For ECOWAS, what they ought to have done in July is what they are now doing in December. Better late than never. The whole project of military intervention was just a distraction. It was a setback on the attempt to get these leaders to get a realistic timetable to return to democratic government. They say 3 years. ECOWAS should maintain the sanction. It buys hard. They will be able to reduce that 3 years, or maybe 1.5 years or thereabouts.
Gentlemen, you are professors of politics. Can we make progress with the kind of political parties we have across West Africa and Central Africa? Political parties that are prebendal in nature and that lack the capacity to evolve as institutions for the consolidation of democracy. So where is your optimism coming from?
The fundamentals
is possible.
The fundamentals are not
These
there.
political parties and the politicians, including Professor Kila, I think they're also a politician. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm everything but a politician. The fundamentals are not there, unfortunately. And you know, you bring out the sad truth. But there's one thing, you know, whilst we try to cage the influence of individuals and institutions in Africa, it is also so true that Africa has a tradition of individual making a difference. So if by accident or by design, one or two people get in the right place, they can actually make a huge difference, you know, in the situation that is so bad. They might just step in. So let's put it this way. The fundamentals are not there for change and progress, but miracles do happen, and, you know, they can just be kind enough.
A continent run on the fuel of optimism.
Of optimism,
right?
serendipity.
And
yes.
miracles.
And miracles.
Well,
yes.
No wonder the pastors are so powerful.
Yes, my own point
Professor Aworawo.
is not on miracles, actually.
Okay.
At least we are making progress here and there. It's just that it's not swift enough and it's not extensive enough. We just had an election in Liberia, where, you know, the people spoke, so to speak, and the people's voice has been respected. More of that. What we are doing now, you know, trying to get people, trying to educate people as to the right direction to go. When people know the direction to go, they can. It's actually the people that have the power. All these political parties can be rubbished if the people take the decision
Okay, but
to change the system.
do you agree, as alleged in some other fora, that ECOWAS is weak, ECAS is weak, the African Union is weak? African leaders don't even know, they don't have a clue. Do you agree?
I don't agree. I have to some extent, yes. ECOWAS is weak, and the reasons why ECOWAS is weak are obvious. Some of the things we have said. Many of the leaders came to office following a process that was not neat and tidy. Many of them have overstayed their welcome, and you know, this issue of tenure, 2 terms and you go. Fortunately, ECOWAS leaders are emphasizing that now because they know that it's one of the reasons why these coups are happening. Things are not happening as rapidly as we would want, but you know, changes are taking place, even if gradual. One of the reasons why this weakness exists is lack of economic, strength. The whole of Africa, the entire Africa GNP is a little over 2 trillion. One state in the US, California, is about 2 trillion as well, just like the whole entire Africa. So there's also this economic dimension to it. And these things have been addressed, and progress is not being made as swiftly as we expected. You know, some glimmer of hope here and there, some progress here and there, and hopefully all of this enlightenment, this new realization that this is the direction we need to go, that alone is something that will do. All of these, you know, old anachronistic political parties and leaders, they need to, you know, step aside. Democracy must be respected. Is in virtually all these regional organizations. They all have it. ECOWAS has it. Yeah. The African Union too has it, which is why everybody is talking about democratic governance across Africa. That realization and the desire to pursue it is gratifying.
I think,
Professor Kila, yes.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing that, you know, people are saying it. You know, sometimes people start lying before they become honest. You know, it's a gradual step. You start from hypocrisy, then all of a sudden they become truly. A lot of people are going to church. They're not really Christian, but if they keep going, they might actually become Christians while already in the church. Maybe even while after they become pastors, they might actually find Christ. They start by lying. So it is the same process now that African leaders are mounting democracy. But my hope for Africa is outside politics. I totally agree that ECOWAS is weak, is worse than weak. ECAS is weak, is worse than weak. AU, for what they should be doing, they're more than weak. But you know what can help Africa actually? It is education, entrepreneurship, and dynamism from the private sector. If, instead of focusing so much on the power of politics, if business people and the academia, artists and creators of content, business people and investors can start to look at Africa as a market, so that when Professor Aworawo talks about a very low GDP, if people can say, look, let me go and invest elsewhere. I take a translator that will translate from in French, or I learn French myself. And I say, where is it happening? Let's go and do it there. that will make Africa grow. Because at some point, when citizens, commerce, trade, education becomes vibrant, it will lower the power of politics, which is not doing well at all. And that's what we need to keep looking at. And that will change it, especially with technology. The fact that a young or old person, it doesn't matter, can stay in one room and create one content that can go across millions of people within days is a huge thing that we need to look at. And for me, that allows us to be hopeful. When Professor Aworawo says that they can make the parties redundant, that people can rubbish the party, to do that, they need to be educated though. Otherwise, they'll just follow it.
Okay, I get your point, Professor Kila, about the involvement of the private sector.
Yes.
After all, we have examples. Mo Ibrahim,
Yes.
are getting involved in that space. Tony Elumelu
Yes.
of Nigeria, Aliko Dangote, Femi Otedola.
And our banks.
And our banks, that are all over the place.
Pan-African.
Access Bank,
Yes.
Zenith Bank, all these banks, United Bank for Africa,
yes.
reaching out.
Yes.
And trying to create a different kind of ecosystem.
Yes.
Okay, backed also by the African Development Bank, led by Akim Additional,
Yes.
the Afrexim Bank,
Yes.
led by Benedict Urama. So there are possibilities in that direction.
Two academics, by the way. You want to emphasize that so that people will know that. It's not just talk.
Academics also has its limits.
Okay, here we go. Go ahead.
It doesn't mean that all the degrees.
Continue your show, Dr. Ruben Abadi, PhD.
Sometimes the academics may prove not to be intelligent enough. But at least we've seen very concrete examples from the entrepreneurship side and also from the intellectual side. But let's take one more subject on this program. And I will be coming to you first, Professor Aworawo. The controversy over the government-instituted payment platform, IPPIS, may have ended as universities and other tertiary institutions have now been authorized to discontinue the use of the integrated payroll and personnel information system. This decision was part of the resolutions made during Wednesday's Federal Executive Council meeting this week. State correspondent Adesua Omonwan reports.
President Bola Tinubu and his cabinet convened once again for a Federal Executive Council meeting addressing crucial national matters. This session, coming 2 weeks since the last, began with the swearing-in of the chairman and members of the Federal Civil Service Commission, along with the chairman of the Anti-Graft Agency, ICPC. Following discussions, it was revealed that the Council approved the removal of universities and other tertiary institutions from the controversial Integrated Payroll and Personal Information System, otherwise known as the IPPIS.
You recall that university authorities and ASU have been clamoring for the exemption of the universities and other tertiary institutions from this system. Today, Council has graciously approved that. What that means is that going forward, the universities, like the Honorable Minister of Education has said, and other tertiary institutions, the polytechnics and colleges of education, will be taken off the IPPIS system, the Integrated Personnel and Payroll Information System. What that means in simple language is that the university administration, the university authorities, and other tertiary institutions will now be paying their own personnel from their own end instead of relying on the IPPIS that has been the case.
The Minister of Education underscores the rationale behind this decision.
The President and the Council is just concerned about efficiency of management of the universities. And so it has nothing to do with integrity or options of platforms. Simply, the President cannot understand why Vice Chancellor should be leaving their duty post and be running to Abuja to get staff enlisted on IPPIS when they get recruited.
In 2020, the Academic Staff Union of Universities embarked on an 8-month strike due to disputes with the federal government over the payment platform, citing corruption allegations with the system. Subsequently, university lecturers opted for the University Transparency Account System, UTAS. The IPPIS, introduced in October 2006, was part of the federal government's reform initiatives to store personnel records effectively and promote transparency and accountability. It is left to be seen how those affected by this decision respond to it. In other developments, the Council approved 2 memos for the Ministry of Aviation. This included a technical support services contract to maintain the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos over the next 5 years, costing 4.1 billion naira.
We have said that they should maintain their chillers, the air handling units, the passenger boarding bridge, the escalators at the concourse, the remote boarding lifts that were specifically made for the physically challenged, and all those facilities they put there.
There is also the issue of other economic policies that were discussed at Council today. Of note is the issue of waiver in addition.
Okay, gentlemen, let me start with you, Professor Aworawo. Look, even the National Industrial Court declared the IPPIS fraudulent. The Academic Staff Union of Universities, under the leadership of Biodun Guyemi, my friend and colleague, with whom we were both lecturer too in Olabisi Onabanjo, Ogun State University, as he then was, led the struggle. Now, years after, the same federal government is coming back and saying, oh, the university teachers are probably right about UTAS. That's what the ASU that was led by Biodun Guyemi was recommending. Professor Guyemi, by the way. So don't let me be too familiar with him, you know. But what do you think? Do you think this is a good development?
Yes, it is. We commend the government for the decision. We shouldn't be doing things, bringing in policies that puts us at a worse position than where we were. When universities were, managing their funds and paying their staff from, their ends, it was more efficient. I agree entirely with what the Minister of Education said, that it's about efficiency. The situation whereby the Vice Chancellor will have to go to Abuja to go and seek permission before they can recruit, and only very few of them have actually succeeded. In the past 3-4 years, UNILAG has not been able to employ. Yeah. We have departments that are almost shutting down because IPPIS people refuse to allow universities to recruit. So it's a good decision by the government that
the departments are shutting down.
Yes.
Are you people marking student scripts to allow them to convocate?
Why not? Why not? My department we are.
What about the department?
You people should mark the scripts so that students can go for convocation.
University, I mean, we even had an emergency Senate meeting on the 18th. That's about 3 days ago, to clear the last set of results that have been approved, so that students can, have their convocation in January. We are doing all of that, but in a very, very difficult situation where you used to have 20-something staff. 22, 23, you now have maybe 13, 12, 9. People are, one person is doing 2-3 people's work at the same time. All of this, arose from the IPPIS nonsense. We have gone this rigmarole, but reason has prevailed. That's the important thing. And the other thing I want to add is that government needs to, fund university more. If you say universities should, handle their payment and all that, the money has to be available for them to be able to pay. And that is what you are appealing to government to do. First, pay university lecturers what they have been, their money
and academic allowance.
Yes, their money, including our salaries that I had. 8 months salary, they say 4 months, you have not seen anything. Government needs to do that, pay us our 8 months, let us rest. And then make more money available to the university so that the vice chancellors will not also have the problem of not having enough money and running to the same Abuja for more money. I mean, we are begging government to pay attention to that, so that what they have done can be, the result can be manifested.
Okay, Professor Kila, I know you are. No, you are in Nigeria, but you are a Japa in situ. But this should concern you.
No, but I think
your colleagues in Nigeria are not being well paid.
They're not being well paid. Well, they will be well paid. It's going better now. It's a shame we have to waste so much time to resolve this obvious problem. Some of us pointed it out immediately that this IPP business was a bad business. But, you know, it's a good thing that's been resolved now. And I hope we shall stop meeting, we shall be meeting less vice chancellors at the airport while missing their flight on their way to Abuja. Because the airport has become a meeting place for vice chancellors in Nigeria.
Anyway, thank you very much, Professor Anthony Kila. Thank you very much, Professor Aworawo. Good to hear that you lecturers are marking student scripts so that they can meet convocation. Because it's not just about asking government to do this and do that. You people must also do the work.
We are doing that.
You must apply yourselves.
Exactly.
Yes, that's the important thing. Thank you very much.